Today we're going to do a video about clutches. Been racing for quite a few years and tried some different things and used to run the old stuff, so I know a little bit about clutches. I also see a lot of clutches, guys send in their engines with the clutches on. Please don't send your engine with the clutch on. If you have if you're able to get it off, take it off, please. I know some people don't have a flywheel puller, and that's fine. Just take everything off but the flywheel puller. But most guys that send them are the old three shoe, and you gotta use a tool. We'll go through that later, but I mean it takes me literally probably twice as long to get the clutch off as it does to tear down the engine. So please leave your clutches at home, your air filters at home. But today we're going to talk about clutches and what I found that works and how they've evolved and um, good ways to get them, take them off. We'll talk about flywheel pullers and where you should Loctite bearings. We're going to go through some bearings that have worked in the past for us that work well. So it's not just about clutch maintenance or anything. It's about how the clutches work and how they and the best way to get the most life out of it. So we'll dive into it here. So we're gonna take this clutch off this FX. I ran this FX. This is the one I did a review on it. It's the K501R. It's the Racer Edition FX. They don't make that anymore. I wish they did because it doesn't have the DLC crank and it was quite a bit more reasonable. But I did the review on the K501R. Then I did a follow-up review on it. And so I ran another season on this engine. Although I only ran 4 of our series races, so this only has 4 weekend races. They're Friday practice, Saturday qualifying, Sunday mains type race. So they got more than a club race on them, and stuff. But we're gonna take this clutch off, and I'll show you some things. You'll notice I use a 2.5 millimeter screw on the end. I believe this this keeper on the end here, I don't know what they call it, but this washer here on the end is made by Reds. This one I got from Reds. Other companies make them too, but you want to use something that uses the 2.5 millimeter driver instead of a 2 millimeter, a flathead or a button head. Those tend to strip out really easy, where this one you can use it quite a few times and it lasts because you're going to be Loctiting that screw in. I've even done, this is a TLR, let's put this down. This is a TLR screw, and I've actually just used a regular 3 millimeter screw in that. It has the cone for a flathead, but it still works. I mean, that's what I've used. So let's take this, first we'll take this clutch off. What I like to use is a good channel lock here. We'll try and do this. This is kind of a little bit of work here to do. While not trying to bump the camera. So first you need to take the screw off, and I like the channel locks. Any type of channel lock works well. It's coming off hard the whole way. I got blue Loctite on this. Blue Loctite seems to work the best on there. Just one drop. You don't need to cover everything in it. It could get in the bearings and stuff. So if you have a stubborn one, a little heat on that little mini torch or a heat gun will help take this screw out good. But with the MIP driver and that screw head, it's not a problem. So you'll notice shimming. I got a couple shims here. What you want is, I should have done that before, but what you want is just a very minimal play. When you have everything tightened down, you want just a little bit of a movement in that clutch bell. Maybe, I don't know, some guys got some different ideas, but as thin as you can, but still getting some movement. Usually adding one shim, it's too tight, then take it back out. And that always depends on your clutch and how many shims you have to add. It's not, your bearings make a difference, everything. So everything looks pretty good. I know it spun really good. That's one way if you have your engine out to just see how it spins with everything together. And you can notice the clutch shoes, they're not even worn all the way across yet. This is the stock AE clutch with the stock springs that it comes with. I have not replaced any of these shoes. So I have 2 seasons. I have 5 races one year and 4 races another year. A season might be different for everybody. If you run a lot of club races and stuff, you might go through it. But I think when I did a review on this engine, I had like, what I figured, like 5 or 6 hours on it. So another maybe 4 hours last year. So I mean, we're talking over 10 hours on this clutch, and it's still decent. I think a lot of times if you look it up, some might have a measurement across there you can go. I think sometimes I kind of watch how this wears down to the point there. If you get this flat on the side, but the AE clutch is kind of a spin-off of the Losi 4th shoe. It's a good design. And we'll take the, see if I got it. Again, I use the channel lock to hold. Use the channel lock to hold the flywheel. And just gonna use, we got a shim on there yet. So we're gonna, I'll just use a regular glow plug wrench. Usually fits down in there decent. And probably not in the camera here, but this is an ideal spot in the kitchen. Usually I'm in the shop or something, so there's a perfect example of, I did a video here a while back on what to do if your flywheel comes loose. I was loosening, I had my glow plug wrench in there, and I was loosening, hanging on to the outside with a vice grip, and the collet came loose before the nut did, because I do have blue Loctite also on the threads of the crank, and so that came loose. So I have a video on that, and it basically, in a nutshell, I take the carb out, clean it, make sure everything's clean, and then stick a piece of plastic into the carb, into the crank window, and it'll come right off. So for sake of having to go find something or whatever, we'll go on the rest of the video. I don't need to have this off. I will go through a puller. So I have this puller that I made. I made this thing a few years ago before I had a bought-in one, and it just slides behind. So I actually made a little piece that goes over the end to protect the end, and so it slides on there. And you just tighten this down and pulls it off. The other one I have, this is a bought-in one. Same idea. Hook that behind there. And it doesn't take a whole lot of force. You can just do it with by hand here to get that off. I think I did have to modify this one, depending on your clutch. You need to get behind the clutch, or sorry, the flywheel, and then I think this one wouldn't fit over like this TLR and A8 size clutch, but so it's good to invest in a puller like this. they're probably, I think I paid like 15 bucks for this one. They're not too bad, under 20 bucks probably. So you'll notice this is a 4-shoe clutch that we have on here. And the reason I got so much good life out of this is it has 2 carbon shoes and 2 aluminum shoes. And if you just run 4 aluminum shoes, you will get greatly reduced wear. And I'm not 100%, but my philosophy is that the carbon kind of it kind of lubricates the clutch a little bit, but it doesn't slip anymore. I don't know. I've never really messed around with 4 aluminum very often, but I've seen clutches come in and I've seen guys rebuild them, and they do not last. What happens, I think the carbon kind of deposits a little bit on there, kind of lubricates a little bit, but it still grips plenty good. I use the stock when I ran low-C clutches. This is a low-C clutch, and they're similar. They use a little different way to put the screws in, or the screws to hold the clutches in, and the springs are different. But actually the shoes I think actually do interchange between the two. But see, this one is quite a bit. There's quite a bit of wear on this clutch, but I think the carbon lubricates a little bit. And what happens when you use 4 aluminum, especially if they're a soft aluminum, it deposits, aluminum gets stuck to the inside of the clutch bell, and then you'll have a really grabby clutch because it's raw, kind of a ragged aluminum on top of ragged aluminum, and it's not good. Maybe I don't know, that's kind of an example there. Maybe this is an older 3-shoe. They get even worse than that. You'll just see it's all kind of torn up instead of just worn. So that's why I like the 4-shoe with 2 carbon and 2 aluminum. So then one thing, we're talking. These are some old school 3-shoe clutches, and that's what pretty much the only thing that was available for quite a while. And if you do have to use a 3-shoe, or if you really like a 3-shoe, you can use a 2 aluminum and 1 carbon. I know when I ran Kyosho for a while, they did have a carbon that was the same weight as the aluminum, because that's one thing with the 4-shoe is you have 2 carbons opposite of the aluminum, so then any unbalance to it, so you have 2 carbon across from the 2 aluminum. You don't want to build them with 2 aluminum on one side and 2 carbon, because that could throw it out of balance. So when you run a 3-shoe with 1 carbon, that carbon needs to be similar weight to the aluminum shoes. And I know Kyosho did that. I'm sure other manufacturers did too. But I really like the carbon shoes. Like I said, this one on that engine, what I've got like 10 hours on that thing, at least. So, and then there's different when you're mix and matching brands and stuff. There's different clutch bell lengths. This is the TLR clutch bell. This is the AE one that I took off. I think the AE and the TLR are a little different. You can see I have used a TLR clutch and bell on a Associated, I believe. I think it rode a little bit different, a little more inside, but what is able to work. I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit, but so the other thing too is clutch bell bearings. These are my favorite. The TKO MR105 RT, and the 10 means they're a 10 pack. They're $3 to $4 each, but they're well worth it. So we got a blue and a black seal on those. I'll take one of the. So there's a black seal on one side, blue on the other, and they say the blue faces the inside. So you put them together. You're in the bell, so the blue is inside and the blue facing. So this way and this way. And the reason for that is it's a radial thrust bearing, so it takes a side load. It takes a standard bearing, doesn't take as much side load and stuff, and that's why these are just a better quality, plus they take the side load better, and they just last. I don't know, I think I've had one come apart, but it was after, I put in a used one or something. So typically what I do, like these that just came out of here, typically what I do is I'll replace the bearings before the A main, 30, 45 minute, whatever the A main is, and then I'll leave those clutch bearings in for the next race and practice on Friday night and qualifying, and then Saturday night when I prepare for the main, I'll put a new set in. And it's not like I don't always do that, but you never know when you got to bump up too. Maybe it's a half-hour main, and you got to bump up, and you might have an hour running. So it's good insurance to have $6 or $8 worth of bearings in there. And then they last for a long time. I typically, if I did that same routine, put new bearings in for the if I just put the dollar, like the factory kit ones, the metal shield dollar ones, typically those, I don't think I could run practice and qualifying with them. I would have to probably change them twice. I'd probably run the practice. I mean, I've had them after a 30 or 45 minute main actually be pretty much done, some of the cheap ones. So that's, I don't know. There's some other companies out with a better bearing that came out with some clutch bearings. I don't know if Avid does it. J&T maybe have some better clutch bearings also, but I haven't used those. The TKOs I know do work well. You'd have to experiment with the other ones and see how they are. One thing too, talking about clutch bell bearings, is if you want your clutches to last a long time and your bearings to last a long time, I guess not so much the clutch, but the bearings, is your engine has to be sitting in the chassis square. I know TLR a few years ago came out with lines on the chassis so that you could square up your engine in there. If you have your engine in there sideways, so your spur gears, say your spur gear is running at an angle exaggerated, that puts side load, because your clutch ball, I mean, if you had it like that, your clutch ball would want to, it's always pushing sideways on the bearings, either in or out, if you had it this way or this way. So you want it as square as possible here to get that, so it doesn't have side load on the bearings. It's really important. And a lot of times you can tell on the bottom of the chassis, the screws going up into the mounts, you can kind of tell the space that you have. I use the AE quick engine mount. I like being able to come in with the wrench, out here, because these are a little hard to get at. The ones on the bottom are always hard to get out. So these, you can get at them easy. They come out. I typically don't Loctite those either. I'll check them between runs and stuff, but trying to think what else we got to talk about. I think that's about it. If you guys got any questions, leave them in the notes. We can do a follow-up video or something, but I think that's about it. We'll put a new, probably rebuild this engine since we got it apart. The hardness of the clutch, I guess I could talk down. So there's different hardness of the clutch shoes, and I had some. I used to, when I was running the AE, or no, sorry, running the TLR. Does this one have? See, these blue ones are kind of the stock TLR ones. I used to run a Dynamite, and they were the Dynamite Max Life shoes. These are not those, but they were dark. They almost looked kind of like the carbon ones. You had to look at them close to see. And they were made, of a harder material. It almost looked cast, like it was, like a piston on an engine kind of looks cast, and it has that little bit of a rough look to it. And they really wore well. You could almost get by with those without the carbons, but I always ran in the in the buggy. I ran the dynamite instead of the aluminum because they took place of the aluminum, and I did like those. A little less grabby for the buggy. You kind of want your buggy smooth. And then they lasted well. And then also too, I don't have one here, but I typically will run a steel flywheel on my buggy. You want that thing kind of come off the corner a little bit smoother. It's a little more weight. They do idle a little bit better. So I like the steel flywheel on a buggy at least. There's something you want smoother off the corner. So I mocked up a 3-shoe clutch on this engine just to kind of show how this tool works here. I think this one might be Dynamite, but there's a few different companies sell them. It's just a tool for taking the 3-shoe clutches off. Unlike the 4-shoes, see the 4-shoe, you have your whole clutch as one unit. The nut goes on the crank and holds that on. So if you want to pull your clutch off, you just take the nut off and everything comes off. With the 3-shoe, you have to take all the shoes off before you can get the clutch nut off. See, there's a groove that the spring sets in, and this tool you just put it in there, and then that gives a nice smooth surface for the shoe to come off. And you probably need to use a thin screwdriver. Typically, most clutches, you put a very small washer on this first, so the clutch shoe isn't touching the flywheel. And then you kind of use a screwdriver and kind of pry it off there. And once you get past, just a little bit with the spring, then they come off. And you can also use this tool to put them back on. It'll help. It's kind of a pain without the tool. You gotta fight with screwdrivers and such. So, and then another thing that I didn't mention was I had a shoe here. You see, this shoe has a big burr on there. So what happens is that was maybe running, like this on there, or sometimes they get a burr on the inside. That can happen too. You get a burr on the inside. Let's try and push that up. So you get a burr on this side, and then as the shoe actually will kind of catch out, it will stay. You'll get a burr there, and then it'll kind of hang there, and then it'll kind of lock up your clutch and stuff too. So take them apart and do some maintenance once in a while. Something like this, if this shoe is probably kind of done, but if you had one that just had a burr and you thought it was good yet, you can file that burr off, maybe a little Dremel work or something, kind of just deburr the edges. Typically, if I'm going to reuse a clutch, I'll say this one, I'll file that surface, get the black back off there. You don't have to do that, but it does help. And then tuning, what you want to do is you can change the springs on either the 3-shoe or the 4-shoe to a thicker spring. What the way these work is just the weight of the shoe flies out with RPM, and a certain RPM it'll start engaging. So the thicker the spring, the higher the rev for engaging. Typically on a 3-shoe, I think we used to run like 0.9, 0.95, 1.0 diameter springs. And then if you were, say, in a muddy instance or sand, or you need a lot of snap, you didn't want your engine to bog, you'd go to a higher spring or a thicker spring for tension. And in the same way with the 4-shoe, I know this is a TLR clutch, and it's got the different colored springs. I typically just run the stock TLR and the stock AE springs. They work well, truggy, buggy. Maybe a buggy you could go down just a little bit, but I've never really had any problems with it. But if you're in an instance where you do want, say, a little bit higher stall or whatever before it grabs, you can go to they do make some thicker ones to get that engagement higher. So thanks for your time, and hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.